Yeah.
For sure.
Thank you, Dilip. Rahul, after you said a few words about the book, um, I'd really want to know what has been your approach to identify and develop talent, because you've done it across three of the top brands. And of course, now your last assignment. You're muted. Unmute. Rahul, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, BW, Dr. Batra and Bhuvnesh for facilitating this platform. And Shantha, this is wonderful because to me, it's like scoring a hat trick, because what you did in Singapore and then the act to follow on in India. And after that, to see you in this new avatar is wonderful. And writing a book like this actually calls for lots of courage and commitment, because the humility that you have, that you carry in my interactions with you, that was one thing I was, always left touched by or impressed by. And actually reading the book, I've understood that it's actually a genetic gift to you, given the fact that, you come from a family of priests. And writing a book is actually a brilliant endeavor in giving back. So thank you, because this will help enrich many people, both personally and professionally. And Bhuvnesh, when I was reading the book, three messages stood out to me very clearly. One was, what is the foundational message of the book? Second is, how should this philosophy be interpreted? And third was, how should it be put in action? So I was reading the biblical story of Peter walking on water. And I was trying to figure out, was Shantha putting himself at Jesus's feet, or was he trying to be Peter? Because in chapters, I saw that reflected. And when Mr. Kachu was speaking of collaboration and soft skills that leaders need to have, it cannot be if they do not have belief in themselves. Because only a leader who is secure in his or her own grounding can provide a safety net for his people to fail. So when a leader reaches that belief system where he says, I have belief and I convey that trust to you, whether it's a biblical fable or whether we see it everyday life, to me, that was a brilliant foundational message. And then looking at the pandemic and what's been happening, when Shantha wrote about the Stockdale paradox, and I was reading, it led me to read about, Commander James Stockdale, who later became the Vice Admiral of the US Navy. His entire approach to saying, how do you balance realism and optimism in a dire situation? So when Mandeep said we have to embrace change, yes, we cannot ignore the reality that yes, we have a pandemic ongoing, but in this, how do we drive enough optimism? And the third and the key anchor message to me has been a message of metamorphosis. So Shantha introduced a statement by Oprah where she says that you have to create the grandest vision possible for your life because you become what you believe. And I was hearing Dilip say that he wants to ensure that people become the best version of themselves. And I can see this metamorphosis already taking place because I think Dilip's dormant author has already arisen. And the resolve that he's now made to put pen to paper. Look, if this belief system can touch somebody and bring out dormant energies like this, this is wonderful. So Shantha, thank you once again. And Bhuvnesh, you said, what's been my guiding philosophy while recruiting? It's actually just been very simple. That while recruiting, let's just look for attitude, because skills is something that we will train for. So everything else being equal, if the attitude is right, meaning if the ground is fertile, then it is left to the farmer that whatever seeds he puts in, they have to flower.
True. To an extent also, Rahul, what you guys did at Lemon Tree, where you also brought in, I should not say, I would say the better children of God, right? So almost 33% of them who would not have had opportunities anywhere, you gave them opportunity, right? That too is talent. They
No,
too,
Bhuvnesh, let me
they are
actually
gifted.
just hold you there, because when we look at these initiatives, sometimes the halo kind of disrupts our thinking. In the beginning, what actually started off was, in some ways, one day Patu said, why can't we do this stuff like this? And I must tell you, I said we will run this as a beta in 3 hotels. This was Gurgaon, Goa, and I think Hyderabad. And I was surprised, for the first 3 months, there was no traction, even though we had a briefing with the GMs and all that. Because we realized that they were very hesitant in recruiting from this talent pool. Because we ran Lemon Tree on very tight staffing ratios. So they were thinking that, hey, would they be as productive as the other so-called able set? Then I said, okay, for the first year, these numbers are over and above your wage bill. And then those first 3 hotels took in. And then the big thing we realized was that the disability was on our side, because we couldn't speak their language. And then at Lemon Tree, we said people need to learn sign language. So how do you say thank you? How do you say good? Example, how do you say good evening? This is good. It's so easy to learn. And this is evening. This is the setting sun. Or for example, you want to say good morning. This is good. And morning. This is the rising sun. It's so simple. You want to say good afternoon. This is good. Afternoon. This is the blazing sun in the afternoon. So we realized that disability was on our side. And I must tell you, we were then thinking of, saying, how do we get visually impaired? So I met this gentleman who was 100% visually impaired. He comes on in and he's sitting with me. Then I asked him, his name was Shubham.
Shubham Arora.
Shubham Arora. So I
had a story with him. I have a story with him.
No, so I must tell you. So I had 2 EAs. So Shubham was one of my EAs. So he comes in and I ask him, I said, so what do you like? This is part of the interview process. So he says, sir, I like Salman Khan movies. Now I'm taken aback. I said, how do I ask him that? How does he enjoy a Salman movie? Because will it be insensitive? So I said, Shubham, what do you do? He said, sir, Salman's movie, first day, first show, I buy a ticket, I go to the theater and I enjoy it. So I said, look at this guy. Do I have to learn from him? Or, am I supposed to teach him? That was my learning. And this guy, I must tell you, Bhuvnesh, he turned out to be one of our best internet researchers. He used a program called JAWS, which would convert it into an auditory signal. And then later, he went also to the sales team and his portfolio became the embassies. This was the guy. And the first Braille menu at Lemon Tree got created courtesy this guy, because one day he said, we don't have a Braille menu. I said, I don't know how to, and he created it. Besides this, I think when we look at a diverse set, there is another advantage. See, India today has 21 million people who are disabled in some form or the other. And many people don't even report it in the census because it's considered, a social taboo. So while we are fighting for talent on one hand, and everybody is going to the same talent pool, there are these 21 million people that nobody is doing anything about. So even from a business perspective, if we speak about society stakeholder relationship or strengthening our responsibility, I think it's a brilliant quid pro quo. Because if organizations can go to these diverse talent pools, whether in India we have an issue about gender, about ability, about social outlook, this will all come through to transform.
True. So Shubham used to call me up and chase me for everything. Till one day when I came to meet you, Patu and Ratan,
Huh.
he came to receive me at the reception, with his stick. And I said, I have to meet Shubham. And he used to respond to me in under 1 minute on mails and messages. He used to chase me for copies for everything. And I didn't know he was gift sighted, right?
Yes.
And I was told he never took company transport. He used to come on the metro.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
So there are stories galore, and these are so motivating. Uh, Kachur Saab, I'm rounding back to you.
All
Uh,
yours.
so tell me, how many years? 50 years in the industry?
No, it's over 40. And I'm happy for that.
All right. So tell me, give us an insight into your path to success, and what are the mantras that you followed and you would want to share with the industry and with all wannabe hoteliers who want to get into the industry, students and the impressionable.
Uh, since we are looking at what Shantha has created, I'll limit myself to around that. I think one of the key things which I think I managed to say for myself was believe in myself. I felt that we need to pursue a quality that leads to greatness. It cannot be left where it is. I think that has made my journey a little easier, simpler, and fruitful. Mandeep, Dilip, and Rahul, they all said one thing which was very clear, that you should be open to change. And I started with, I did my initial training in private sector, but ultimately took my first job with a public sector, which was coming up, and it was a great learning process. And I'm really proud that public sector has produced many CEOs, even in India. They are international, but even in India, the biggest chains are led by them. So we had this opportunity to learn. Now, I think one of the things which I tell myself and tell my colleagues, that you have to be future ready and market relevant. If you are not future ready, you're not market relevant, you will be marginalized. You have to learn to juggle roles. If you don't do that, it'll not work anymore. Successful businesses have to take decisive actions, particularly in an extremely fluid environment like it is today. I think you have to keep on changing your priorities, but be focused on your key objective, what your objective is. What I liked in his book was he came out through the book and what his mentees or people who worked, colleagues, have always told me. He was one person who was very worried about numbers, but did not stop there. He was equally worried about their well-being. He was people's person. And I think in our business, if you are not people's person and are not ready to change, you have no place in the industry. I'm making it as hard as possible. You have no place. it's, yes, you have to strike a balance between leading from the heart while your head should remain focused. And that's what I have tried to do, Bunesh. And I'm grateful to the people who worked with me, my colleagues, my superiors, I have had the opportunity to work with great managers in both private and public sector. And I think what they taught me, I am trying to implement at every stage. And every day is a new day for me. And it is focused on what is required today, not what was required yesterday.
Thank you, Mr. Kachru. Words coming from you, they echo and they will stay. They'll all be on recording. So I'm sure more people will be coming in and watching what you have said, what all of you have said. Before I go to Mandeep, I'm going to do that commercial thing over here. I want to announce the new show. This is called the BW Hotelier, the GM show. It's all about leadership. It'll be coming soon. We will have, there's not one show, they're not two, they're not three, they're not 10, there are more than 10 shows. They are going to be all over India. And the very best GMs are going to be on show. We should be starting very soon. We'll be announcing the dates. And look out for this. Top GMs of India will be on show. The best talking minds, the best thinking minds. Yeah. So coming back to Mandeep, tell me, how do leaders leverage upon co-creation with their employees?
Interesting subject, Bhuvnesh, on co-creation. I think this has been the mantra for a lot of successful companies. I think it started first with co-creating with customers and with the belief that, it's not just the company that is responsible for making the best product for the consumer, but it's also the customer who can play a part in, deciding or contributing to what could be the best product for the customer. And I think we're now, the early companies to use it was Lego, very successful in that model. And I think we are carrying it forward. There's been a lot of research and a lot of papers published by Harvard and various other universities. And I think we're carrying it forward now to co-creating with employees as well. That it's not just, how we think that we need to treat our employees, but equally the employees must also have a seat on the table on how, employees in an organization must be dealt with. And I think carrying employees into the co-creation ability, even while you're designing products, you're designing the policies of the organization. And of course, largely on how employees must be dealt with, the hierarchies within organizations is part of the whole co-creation process. It's something that is now becoming fairly popular, and I think a step in the right direction. I think we need to use a lot more of that in our industry as well, as structures get leaner, as hierarchies within organizations, must become simpler, more flatter. We must have the ability to co-create, the environment of success with our employees as well. So I think a great area where a lot of work is being done, and I think a lot of work still needs to be done, but a great mantra for successful companies.
Thank you, Mandeep.
Just before I sign off, quickly, Shantha, a lot has been said about your book, but what I love about your book, as Dilip mentioned, and I think all the others did as well, including Mr. Kachru and Rahul, I think it's just so simply written. It gets you very engaged, and it makes it, a can't put down kind of book, because it's very engaging. And like Dilip said, there is no ability to complicate. There is no, intention to complicate it, by any jargon or, stuff that may sound very, very impressive. It's simple. It's easy to understand, and I think it will have wide-reaching a good spread of understanding, because people will relate to all of this. I know that I could with a lot of the stuff that I read in the book. So kudos to you. And I have to admit what Dilip said is that it all brought that whole thing about wanting to write that book and become an author.
There you are.
There you are. I've been saying this for a very long time. I was at another book launch for a very dear friend, Prakash Iyer, who's also an author, and he recently did a book saying, "How come nobody told me that?" Again, leadership, small anecdotes, and I keep saying that I must end writing a book, but it's not so simple. It all looks simple when you read books like Shantha has written in the simplistic way. It takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of doing. But it's just one of those things. I'm not sure whether I will end up writing it, but it's just that the book brought that out. That maybe I should also author something. But great work, Shantha. Kudos to you and all the very best.
I'm sure I'll see your book one day.
Their book.
Yeah, 2.
So, I mean, before the show finishes, perhaps there may be a third announcement. So, Dilip, a recently published article in Bloomsburg highlighted that post-pandemic, our world curriculum could be more sustainable and holistic rather than adopting to conventional subjects. What do you say?
The fact of what I spoke about earlier, that we would look to adapt lessons from a recently launched book like Shantha's into our curriculums, modules, or some way of learning for students. The idea is to do that constantly and consistently. And you can only do that if you stay strongly engaged with the industry, with the understanding of what's happening and what changes are happening. Today, these changes happening are almost irreversible. How do you educate young students who otherwise thought of hospitality as a high-touch, low-tech business, and suddenly now they have to be trained, and employers are looking at them to say, do you understand what contactless is? Do you understand that you now need to deliver the same level of service without seeing your customer? Now, if you can build these changes as they're happening into your curriculum so that students can understand, experience them, I think that is the way of the future. So absolutely, different aspects of curriculums have to change. It's a tragedy in country that curriculums are still so archaic and so old. My sense is, if anything else, this pandemic will almost force educational institutions to completely relook at the way in which they deliver learning, not just the contents of the curriculum, but how are today's learners wanting to learn. The days of the professor teaching and the student sitting there and listening are gone. And if we can change that approach, and that approach can be changed, at least with my experience in education, by actually trying to blend academic discipline and rigor with industry experience, knowledge, and expertise, right? It's only when you bring these two people together, these two kinds of people, and then you look at your content, you look at how you're going to deliver it, you look at how you can democratize the education through technology, through blending the learnings. I think as we begin to adapt all of these, we'll begin to see a much better talent pool coming out. I have said this several times, it is almost like a time bomb for the hotel industry. If we want to attract good talent, we have to change ourselves. Today, talent studying hospitality, many of them are saying we don't want to work in hotels. How do we go about changing that mindset? And to me, as an educator who comes from the industry, I think it's one of the biggest challenges for us to tell our students that hospitality remains a great opportunity, provided you can make them believe that hospitality as an industry, its leaders, the way it treats its employees also changes. And I think some of that is being brought out in the book as well. But these kind of changes are really required. Today, for example, almost every student coming in one way or the other says, "Mujhe entrepreneur banna hai." I mean, the young person probably can't even spell the word entrepreneur, but it is about, I want to be an entrepreneur, right? When I think about what can be a new mantra for management, I think instilling entrepreneurship within managers is key. If you look at what's happened in the last 2 years of the pandemic, the stories coming out from all of your organizations, the industry, is about how leaders, GMs, others came out, thought out of the box, did different things, and survived, right? If they didn't have that thinking, that entrepreneurial spirit and thinking, they wouldn't have been able to do this. Now, that was forced upon them. Imagine if you churn out talent which has that built in as a mindset. Doesn't matter, I want a corporate career, but I always want the mindset of thinking like an entrepreneur. That can only happen when curriculums and the ways in which you deliver learning to students make it much more experiential. All of that, I'm very optimistic that that's the way the industry is proceeding further. And I'd like to believe that over time, institutions like mine or others then become this common talent pool to retain the best talent for the hospitality industry. You don't want hospitality students going and working in retail and luxury and aviation and real estate, which are actually taking precedence over hotels and restaurants and culinary arts, right? We have to arrest that. And I think it is incumbent upon the industry to be able to do that.
Not just the industry, Dilip, I think the hospitality, travel, and tourism is actually at the cusp of something much bigger. I mean, if you were to see, we are 1.3 billion of us, right? Even if we were to take our target TG, as we say, our target group at about 250, 300 million, right? Compare us with Bali, with Thailand, with Dubai, with Abu Dhabi. Where are we? I mean, if there was going to be an explosion in the number of hotels which are going to open, we surely will have to import talent.
You're right. The problem is not about what's going to change. I think everybody knows. Will leadership in our industry adapt, embrace that change? Because if they remain the same, then the young talent going in is going to go out within a couple of years. True. Because they're not inspired by the leadership.
But Dilip, is there a choice? If I may say, is there a choice? I don't think there is a choice.
I agree with you, sir. I don't think there's a choice too, but leaders must change.
You know, our leaders have to learn to step into the shoes of, if you say, hospitality, staff, guests, and stakeholders. I think the issue is what is needed today, what do they want, and what can we do together with them? I think unless we induce this, it's not going to happen. I'm really happy and glad that you are thinking in that manner, and you will educate and you will produce talent who are, because it's a human want. What can you do? They want to really have that kind of thinking. They want to be entrepreneurs. Ultimately, they want to make more money. They want to have good standard. They want to make decisions. And that cannot happen if we don't change. I think we have no choice. That's what I wanted to say.
Well, they can also be entrepreneurs in their jobs.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
we have to restructure the whole thing.
So we are only limited by our imagination, as they say. Rahul, I shall round off this session with you. I have to put my finger out on one out of the three that I have to ask you, right? So do you feel the need of apprenticeship models in the industry, or does the industry need the combination of academic learning followed by a full-time on-job experience?
See, Bhuvnesh, our industry, like all other industries, I think it's a two-tier business. At one level, it is the dispersion of uniform policies, culture, decision-making, and wearing a common brand lens. And what makes hotels interesting or tough, example like the army, is that because we are so geographically spread, people have to have that ability and willingness to take on diversity, not only in geography, but in roles. So this sort of talent, yes, we will need, like other organizations or other industries, for it to have a fast track cadre, which will have a different intellectual rigor, and it has a different aspiration in life. Now, one thing that Dilip alluded to was, for example, people saying we want to be entrepreneurs. So how does the industry address that request? The other along with that is that because we are hospitality, and because lots of our business is grounded to a geography, a real estate, and essentially our business is to be able to serve others. So we will need a big service muscle. Now, this service muscle, as you very well know, running a hotel is actually like running a township. You will need a plumber, you will need an electrician, you will need, somebody to serve in the restaurant, cook in the kitchens, clean and do so on and so forth. Now, if we were to propel everybody into, getting into a university and then saying you can do hotels, that's a waste of nation's time and talent. And that's not also the right return on investment for people like that. So there, especially for a country like us, apprenticeship becomes critical. Now, one change in the model that I see, which is already happening, and I see it reflected in US. So 18 months ago, Uber was letting go of its people, and that made very big news. And hey, 7 months ago, 8 months ago actually, Uber does the biggest IPO of US of last year, $100 billion market cap company. So what does it tell us? That the talent that we have held till now, ground to specific roles or geography, there is going to be Uberization of that talent. And along with that, the big opportunity for India is, how can we start exporting hospitality talent to the world? Because 40 or 50 years ago, if we were relying on Europeans to come on in, at least in Asia, to say, how should hospitality be? Because if we were aiming for that traveler and those standards, today two things have changed. Asia is on the rise. It's Asian values of saying, how do we deliver great quality, great price points, and very aspirational, and also to millennials which reside here. So if all of that is contained in our geography, how do we deliver that value to the world? So I think today it's become the time for Asia, and with India and China as the linchpin for this, there will be great opportunity in both these tracks. One, people pursuing, a full, undergrad education and further, who can then become key pivots to expand brand knowledge, awareness, concepts across, and then very strong apprenticeship programs. And I have also seen some state governments, and also in US, very interesting, that you don't have to be married to an industry to be an apprentice. So for example, you could be a lawyer during the day, but at night you could be serving at a bar. Whether you are doing it because it's your passion or you need another income. I have seen in Boston, getting served by somebody who's actually, an Harvard alumni. So all of these things coming together. And I think if we take this metamorphosis in our stride, we can actually rewrite how the industry should benefit from this accelerated impact of the pandemic.
So tell me, Avi, is this the content for the third book?
You never know.
So let me tell you about a Boston story. We have our own thing going on in Coimbatore, where you have Anna Lakshmi, where the top CEOs from across the industry go and serve.
No, I must tell you, the CEO of Goldman Sachs, you would be surprised, he's into music. Yeah. And he plays as a DJ, and he goes by the name DJ Sol. So this is Sri Solomon himself, playing as a DJ. Now, is he doing it as a double income? No. He's in a mature economy because that's another part of his being that needs expression. So individuals will have varying needs. So instead of being very cadre bound, how do you allow expression? How do you allow sustenance? How do you allow a weaver to go in and say, I will also serve people, who are coming into, let's say, a Rajasthan? How do you allow somebody who's processing food stuff in Kashmir to say that the best Rogan Josh only I can make? So do I need to be a regular hotel chef? No. If you are in Kerala and you need to know how to learn swimming in 3 days, in 3 hours, the boatsmen of Kerala, what you will not learn in any landlocked city, you will do weeks. In 3 hours, they will teach you. So how do you get all of this learning together? That's
I
a
must
great
tell you,
opportunity.
if this is not a great advertisement for Indian hospitality, what is? You guys are living models. If anybody is watching this show and making notes or coming back and watching the recording, you guys make the best advertisement for the industry, for the talent that this industry can take in, right? I must tell you, we must do more of this and take you to the impressionable, take you to the institutes, right? Dilip, of course, I'm sure we can do something special with ISH and bring leaders over there. I'm sure he keeps doing it, but we could do it on a larger virtual canvas. Having said that, we've much overshot our time, but then interesting chats do not always see time limits. Shantha, may I request you to do the honors of summing up the show?
Thank you. That was interesting discussion. And always when you have luminaries like we have on this panel, there's so much of thoughts and gems of wisdom coming out. It's very difficult to not ignore anything of that. But I think I love the conversation, but also I love that it's germinating ideas and also probably pointing towards more things that we can do with our talents and our learnings and our experiences. So hopefully this will lead to something even more in the future. To sum up a few things that I took away from today, we wanted to talk about leadership for tomorrow. And listening to all of you, there were a lot of things that came across as important things for leadership for tomorrow. From Mr. Kachru, I think one key message that came out was about collaborative leadership, which is really important in today's world because we can't work in silos and in isolation. And especially with the circumstances that we are faced with, that collaboration that leads to innovation, creativity, working together is critical. So I think for tomorrow's leaders, developing tomorrow's leaders, that collaboration is important. And then Mandeep spoke about the importance of embracing change. I think there's never a time like this to embrace change, right? What is today changes tomorrow. And the pace of change is amazing. And unless we are able to collaborate and embrace change as fast as it happens, we cannot be ahead of the game. So it's another very important lesson for leadership for tomorrow. And I think Dilip, true to his nature of nurturing talent, spoke about nurturing talent now, right? Not for later. That if you nurture leaders today, tomorrow they will be in a better position to be in that leadership position. And that's something that's really critical. And I think a lot of organizations need to take that on. And Dilip, you're in the best situation to do that with the people under your charge who come across. But I think that's the important element we sometimes forget. And that investment in nurturing talent today can pay off multiple times tomorrow. And that's important to as well for the health and well-being of everyone and also the businesses. And then Rahul, as usual, had a lot of good ideas that he shared. I know he's well-read and has a lot of thinking that he likes to share. One thing I took out of it is about belief and attitude. I think that attitude in leaders is critical because that's what makes a leader. You can either take the attitude of a glass half full, or you can take attitude of a glass full or half empty. So I think it's about how you look at things, and it's your leadership attitude that will permeate through the organization. And if you as a leader stand up and show your belief, your positiveness, your communication skills, your collaborativeness, your adaptability to change, I think that's going to make us all better leaders. And to that plethora of ideas, if I may add one message from me, my message would be about the Stockdale paradox. I think we need to retain faith that will prevail in the end, regardless of the difficulties. But what is important is that we need to face the brutal facts of the current reality. Because very often we believe in possibilities, but we don't face we don't accept what we face. If we accept what we face, and then at the same time have that faith that we can succeed, then we can build the journey towards that. And I think with all the gems of wisdom we heard from all of you, if we can believe that we can and will succeed, but also face the facts of the current reality, I think that will be a great foundation for us to build our own success and build the success of leaders for tomorrow. I think that's my summary of today's learnings. There's a lot more messages, but these would be, I think, the key messages that I would love to share.
Shantha, what is next?
Good question. I think a visit to India is definitely the next. I mean, actually, of all the places,
that was my next question.
Yeah, of all the places, I've been telling my wife the other day as well, I miss India, but I have another book in me, which I have been thinking about. But time is what I need to create. But what I was thinking, and Dilip, to your point, my ambition was to create something for the younger generation, to develop them as leaders rather than later on in life. So hopefully maybe one day that will come true.
Oh, awesome, Shantha. I mean, like with your experience, I'd be happy to do that and take some of the life.
Yeah. We should collaborate.
So good. So Girish Bindra, of course, has a few words for you in the chat box. Looking forward to seeing you here. All right. On that note, before I sign off, I must thank you, Kachru Sahab. Thank you for sparing your time and for words of wisdom. Yeah, it's always happy to have you. We're always very happy to have you back here. Dilip, thank you for being here. Yeah, Mandeep, Rahul. We have a lot more planned over here. I've been chatting to some people. Some of you are aware of what we are planning. Of course, the GM show is the next thing that's on the immediate horizon. We have bigger things planned out and better things planned out for the industry. And thank you for being here. Thank you again on behalf of BW Businessworld and BW Hotelier. Thank you, Mandeep. Thank you, Dilip. Thank you, Kachru Sahab, Rahul, and Bye-bye, Shantha.